Hey, what's up, guys? Matt here with Merly Gaming. Today, I want to talk about some more electrical stuff, mainly about a few different concepts that I'll say they're not necessarily hard to understand, but they take a little bit of thought and it's not as intuitive as you would think. First thing I want to talk about is how to charge multiple batteries off of one source or a bunch of sources that you're combining and split up to charging multiple batteries. Now, this is something that eluded me for a while because I used to try to daisy chain batteries together, and that is an absolute definitely don't do. Um, it's a long story basically, but basically what it does is it drains all your batteries. Your batteries will all be at zero before you know it if you try to daisy chain them. And I think it has to do with this 80% efficiency. And there's been a long standing problem in Rust of the tooltips kind of being somewhat wrong. So, they're programmed one way, and then someone writes up a comment at some point, and then I think what happens is they end up updating some of the code, and nobody updates the comment. This is just a guess, but basically these comments aren't 100% right all the time. Like it does say charging rate is dependent on power in with a maximum of 80% efficiency. In my rough guess estimations, it usually you get a 70% efficiency. So if you're charging it for 100, for example, it's actually only going to be charging for about 70-ish. So keep that in mind. So, and that's one of the reasons why daisy chaining doesn't work, because you're getting an efficiency drop through every chain every time, and basically you're just running your batteries into the ground, and it doesn't work well. All right, so how do you charge multiple batteries? I don't know. Let's set up a few. I'm going to set up a few things. After showing you this, I'm going to show you a backup battery concept that often people transition into what they call the knee core. Now, this is, I don't know. I don't think it's as useful as some people say, to be honest. And I just realized that my sound is kind of messed up. I'm going to fix that. Okay, that should be better. You should be able to hear my in-game sound now. Okay, so we're going to set up a few batteries. Not really about base building this tutorial, so I'm just doing whatever. And we'll have battery 1, 2, and 3. And I don't think I'm going to cut this. I think when I end up cutting videos, I actually end up cutting things that are kind of valuable for the full understanding. So I might cut some silence, but nothing more than that. And we got a turbine here. I guess I'll give it a little stand thingy. I'm not gonna go too crazy with this. I might even just leave it twig, in fact, because there's no risk of destroying this here on this build server. And I just want it to get more than the lowest amount of power. Although I don't know how they have it on this build server, actually, so. All right. And we're going to need a wiring tool, so let's get that out. All right. And first of all, well, now that things are good, we can go down here and I'm going to just go ahead and run it into a combiner to start, just in case we want to combine more sources later. So there we go. We got a little turbine, and you can see the power coming in by hovering over it. We get 112 right now. That's cool. So normally, you might try something like this. All right, you might try going like to this battery. This is the first example I said of how not to do it. And you might think, okay, let's just charge them all like this. And while this eventually will charge them all, you're just losing so much power in the process. Like it says 113, and then you estimate in a 70% loss on this one. So it's actually only getting like, I don't know, we'll say 80-ish as a rough guess. And then to this one, it's just fully draining that, pulling 100 at a time. So this one's going to go down to 0 before we know it. And start filling this one. And this one's also going to go down to 0 because the active usage is 100 once again. And it's basically going to backfill this one first, but at 370% losses, we'll say, maybe 75, somewhere around there. So it will eventually fill this back one, but it's just such a big loss that's not good. So rather than take the big losses over and over, in the draining of these first two, you can just split the charge equally so that they all get charged the same. And this is a little better. Usually people do it with a splitter, and you take the 3 from the splitter and you just do them all in, and that's it. That's how you do it. Okay, and you know, I kind of ranted and raved about how these splitters were great in that one video, but they do have another drawback that I didn't really consider well before, and it's a rounding error. This power always rounds down. For example, if you provide this 10 power, you're only going to get 3 out of each of these, so you lose a power. Or actually, I guess you would need 11, one for it, and then that's down to 10. Then the split 10 splits into 9, and you have to go all the way up to like 13 to get them to 4, and everything in between just gets rounded off. So you can lose up to 2-3 watts just from the rounding error on these. So that's somewhat of a downside, but if you're careful about it and keep that in mind, it's not too bad. It's just something you got to think about. Because I think someone left a comment that said something like, I'm only getting 9 power, and it was that rounding error. They must have been. So if each of these are, that one video, I'm talking about the turret one. If each of these are getting 9.9, for example, that's going to round to just 9. It's always round down. It's a floor, if you're familiar with math concepts. So now all these are charging and none of them are draining, whereas with the previous way of daisy chaining them, the first two will fully drain and the last one will kind of stay charged. But even after the last one's fully charged, the previous two will stay drained like always. So basically the daisy chain just doesn't work because you'd get 1 charged battery and 2 that are just always drained, or whatever, however many, all the previous ones are fully drained. So that doesn't really work. This is better. You do lose a tiny bit of power due to the rounding error and the cost of the components, but that's assumed. It's way better than having everything drained because at least you get to bank all your power. So that's the main way of doing that. You can do it with branches too if you want to put a very specific amount. Say this one always charges for 10 example. So you can do this too. It's not wrong, you know. I just like the splitter a lot. Splitter's cool. As you can say, that one always charges for 10. And I've essentially removed this, so let's just pick it up. This is just another way of doing it. And you could say, you know, and you could split it up a little better. This one always charges for 10, for example. Maybe you might do this if you have like 2 small batteries. And the last one, you could use the dynamic output and say this one always charges whatever's left over after those 2 10s. So these ones should be getting a little 10 all the time, a 10 all the time. So you can control it a little more like that, and this one's getting whatever's left over. All right, and I think this is going to segue pretty nicely into the backup battery, which kind of takes advantage of the blocker and memory cell a little bit, and the OR. The OR is kind of like a combiner. You can sort of think of it as a combiner in a way, because if you have several power sources, you can wire them both into the OR, and it's going to take whichever's higher. But only one of those is going to be drained at a time. So we just want to use a few little, I guess, electrical tricks. I'm not a real life electrician. I'm a programmer, so I'm maybe a little rusty on some of these electrical concepts from the real world, but we're playing Rust here, so it doesn't really matter that much. Okay, but let's just say you have 6 turrets. I'm going to go set up 6 turrets, right? I'll just leave them on twig. It doesn't matter. And you think, okay, 6 turrets. They use 10 power each. So we're going to want 60 power for these 10 turrets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But also, if you want any of them to have any of these hooked up, these each take 1 power. I usually like to have the has target hooked up to an alarm, so I like to provide 11 power to some of these turrets. I'm not worried about the health right now. It's just for example. So we're gonna consider getting 11 power to these turrets. That way we can use these optional things if we want, because they come in handy. But we're gonna say 11 power per turret, okay, for sake of this particular example. If you don't care about alarms or anything like that, you can go with 10 as your number. So that is 66 power. So we always want those to have power, and we want it to come from multiple sources. Say we've got these 3 batteries, and we don't want to care which one gets destroyed. It's still going to provide power. Let's just do it with maybe 2 to start. I guess 3 is fine too. But basically what you want to do is take advantage of the blocker and the OR switch. Because we want to say if the first battery or battery number 1 is powering it, it also has to be blocking the second battery. If that makes sense. So I'm gonna make a little little electrical wall here, I guess, of just this type of thing. This is nice because we get 6 drops with just 3 components, so it's kind of convenient. And normally this would just go to there. All right, we're gonna get these charging real quick. Put that back up. Okay. You know, just for now. We'll mess with this more later. Okay. So normally, yeah, we got this this here. I'm not gonna worry about this one being too clean. I'm gonna rewire it. But basically, normally you would do something like this, and this is perfectly fine. The thing about this is I'm about to get like pretty complicated with a lot of things, and you don't need to get all complicated. A lot of times, for sake of your wipe and getting things done, you just want to get it done quickly, and the most simple, effective way is how you do it. So with that, that's going to provide up to 100 watts, and these are dynamic draw. So, well, first this is going to split it into 250s, right? Which is going to round down because it uses 1 for this, which then takes it to 99. 99 divided by 2 is 49.5. It's going to round down to 49. So each of these are going to provide 49. That's once again going to be divided by 3 and round down anything that turns into a fraction. So we're just gonna plug these all in. And these by default just use 10 power. They only actually use the 11 while the alarm or one of those other taps on the turret is going off. So normally they just use 10. And with these dynamic taps, it will only use 10 or only draw 10 until the other thing's going off. That's what's nice. If you're using a branch, you have to set it to 11 or whatever, and it always uses 11 even when it's not actually using 11, which, you know, that's kind of the drawback. So you got to choose between the dynamic power or the dynamic way of these, where even though it's providing 16, it's only pulling 10, so it's only draining your power 10 worth, even though it can go up to 16. So that should make sense to you, hopefully. But that's the advantage of these, is their dynamic draw. That's what I like about them. So then we got all turrets powered, and this is good enough. You know, if this is all you need, you just need them powered and you don't care about special systems, 1 battery, charging from something, or enough charging sources, that's all you need. And if you can go to your original tap here, your splitter tap, and you can see how much it's drawing. It's drawing 100. That's not right. You got to look up at active usage there in the HUD where it says active usage 63. So it's using 63 power, which makes total sense because it's 6 turrets. So there's 60, and then 3 components, 3 more, 63. Perfect. So the rounding error doesn't draw more power. It's just how much it can provide max that it lowers. So that's kind of nice that it doesn't actually draw the power loss. It just, you lose some max power availability with those rounding errors. So that's, you know, it's not too bad. Could maybe be a little better. I would love it if they rounded up, but I think the problem with rounding up is people can find loops where you can get infinite power and stuff because you just keep hitting rounding errors and gain power. So it makes sense that they always have to floor it. I get it. Floor being round down. It's kind of a math term in case you don't know. All right. So how do we instead turn this into, let's say, in case this battery gets destroyed, we want the second battery taking over. That's something to consider. Let's throw up another turbine just to make sure, you know, we're splitting this between 3. So we want to make sure we have plenty of charge. So let's just throw up another turbine here. I like doing them like this. It seems to be one of the cheaper, more effective, usually upgrade to metal naturally. But we've kind of pre-prepared for this with this this combiner. So, boop, boop. All right, cool. Now we'll see, right now we're getting 125, this 126. This will vary as your wind on world wind changes, of course. It's not always consistent. So sometimes you do want 2 hooked up like this, especially if you're charging multiple batteries, maybe even 3. Yeah, it just depends on your setup. So but keep that in mind. The higher up these go, the more they draw, or the more they provide, rather, as well, of course. But that's kind of a topic for another video. I usually try to get them up at least 6 foundations from the floor. That's only 4, but I figured it'd be good enough for this video. All right, so these are getting plenty of charge for the example, I think. See, this one's getting charged for 42. That's actually not enough. It's going to drain over time. So that's sort of a problem. All right, but that's not a big deal. Let's just go ahead and get this example going. Okay, but basically what you want to do, let me make sure I'm doing this right. This might take me a try or two. I gotta think about this a little bit. You want a branch, and you want its main power to be set to what you need. We know we need 63. We actually need a little bit more if we're considering alarms. If each of those turrets wants an alarm, we need 6 more, so it'd be actually be 69. And we might find that we encounter some rounding errors, and it doesn't provide enough still. So we'll figure that out if we need to. But there we go. But see, there's a little bit of a downside where you need to now consistently draw 69 rather than 63 in this case anyway. It just happened to be that number, not planned. And that works for now. Each of these are getting 11 as intended, so the rounding error is fine. But if it didn't, you can keep bumping this up 1 more until it hits 11 on all these, for example. All right, so, and you have 30 coming out this other end. That's like the extra. So this extra is what we need to take advantage of. We're going to go to, well, I guess there's a couple other ways you can do this. Let's keep it real simple here. Let's go to a, I guess a memory cell here. Or we can do blocker. Yeah, we'll do a blocker. Okay. There's a couple different ways to do this, I guess, this simple. But basically you want a second one of these, and you want to go to this. So basically, as long as it's getting a little over that power, the second one's going to be going. Actually, we don't even need this now that I think about it, if we're keeping it this simple. Just 1 extra battery. You can take the second out and go to the block. So basically, as long as this is powered and getting enough power, it's going to block. And you can imagine what this block is going to do. It's going to be the second battery. So the second battery is effectively blocked as long as the first one is providing enough power. Makes sense? I hope so, because that's the point there. But how do we run this into the power in, but only one of them go? Well, we probably want to do a similar thing here again with this branch. Make sure it provides the correct amount. It was 69 was the number. But obviously we can't tap it in there. This is where the OR comes into play. Remember how I said the OR is basically like a combiner that only chooses one of the sides? That's kind of how you think of it. So you provide this one here and the original one to the other side of the OR. But now you need to bump these up to 70 because the OR takes a power as well. 70. And now this power out goes here. So these should all flip back on. Looking good. Still getting 11 power. Very nice. And you can see that this second battery is being blocked. So it's really this simple of a circuit to get an additional battery going. And if you can continue it on and on, you can say, okay, I got yet another battery. Just for example, I'll go ahead and do the third one real quick. And it's basically the same thing. You have, let me think about this. This is going to be a little weird, actually. I guess you'd need some ORs. So this blocker should be blocked by the first 2. So you would need to do some splitting shenanigans. I guess it gets more complicated the more you add. Let's not worry about that right now. Let's just keep it with 2 for now. But you can imagine that you now need to block from this one. So you need to split it somehow. It's basically going to keep taking a lot more power from that first battery, which is a little bit unfortunate. I guess you can maybe think of a system that it doesn't, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head here. But this gets it done, all right? Because now we can say if this first one isn't getting enough power, it's going to unblock, and the second one will start powering the OR. And that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. If your stuff's split up Yeah, that's great. If your electrical wall's all in one place, it's still a single point of failure. There's a lot of problems with electricity and Rust, mainly that you really got to think about where you put your electrical stuff. Because if, for example, raiders just get to this and blow this up, none of your batteries matter anymore. So I often hide these in some spot that's not worth raiding. You'll have to take that into consideration in how you make your base. But the batteries are often what people seek out as raiders. See, this one's about to die. This is perfect, actually, for example. So when this dies, it should stop providing power, switch to the second one, and as it switches, and now it's doing a flicker thing because it's kind of getting enough power and then losing it. So let's just unhook this. Let's just say this, pretend it got destroyed, or it's fully drained, or maybe its charge component got messed up. It stops blocking, the second battery takes over, and they're still going. So there we go. We got a nice battery backup system. And that's super simple. I wanted to get further. I wanted to get to like the knee core and setting up that. It's essentially this same thing, except the knee core you take from this original charger, you take the original power and power your turrets, and it switches to a battery if that's ever not enough. So you can kind of imagine how to do that maybe. But basically the whole point of it is you don't get this, you don't have to worry about this efficiency loss with the knee core. And I guess maybe I'll do that in the next video. I feel like this is getting a little long for most people already. But pretty simple battery backup system with 2 batteries. Maybe we'll try to, that's enough of the video for now, but I'm going to just, if you want to stick around, I'm going to try to get the third one working correctly as like a bonus thing. And we'll see if we can do it. I think I know how to do it. But yeah, I'll try to get in a Nicar video about how to do it, but it's essentially the same thing. You just consider this initial out as battery 1, basically. And if it doesn't have enough power, you switch to the next one. So it's very similar to this backup battery, but usually you see a whole wall of really confusing stuff when people do it. I just want you to know that's really just this simple right here. We're powering 6 turrets with a backup battery. It's perfect. This is beautiful right here. It doesn't use too many things and all that. So it's pretty ideal in my opinion. All right, so bonus. Let's try to get this next part hooked up. So I'm going to kind of think through it and talk through it in my head a little bit, so bear with me. Let's go ahead and I'm going to do a 3rd turbine. These 2 don't seem to be quite sufficient for charging 3 batteries, powering 6 turrets. Now, just as like a side point, considering that you need 3 turrets to power, or 3 turbines and several batteries to power 6 turrets is kind of mind-boggling to me. Like, I would never do this in a wipe. Like, one's enough. One's enough to power like 9 turrets. So, I guess the point I'm getting to is sometimes this is just a total waste of time. Like, you don't need to do this. If you just hook it up in the most simple way, it actually saves you a lot of power and mental energy. And sometimes that's just best. So don't feel bad if you're not doing this every wipe. It's not like you have to do this. This is just one of those things where like someone likes to do it just to brag. And it doesn't actually help you that much. Because still, you have a single point of failure, this electrical wall, that is kind of a bad thing in a lot of ways, if that makes sense. So I'm not trying to, I don't know. I guess my overall point is just, you can keep it simple and it's probably better. Is the point. All right. Anyway, we're going to hook up a 3rd turbine. Imagine needing 3 turbines for 6 turrets. I always make fun of bases that look like this. They've got like 20 turbines and they have like 6 turrets. And I'm like, the only thing I can think is how freaking stupid is your electrician? Honestly, what are you doing with that many turbines? You should have 40 turrets, but they only have a few. So this is almost turning into that case where we have just so many things and it's just redundant. And it would be, for example, more effective to just put these batteries in such intelligent places in your electrical wall, in such intelligent places that no raider's ever going to hit it. That would be better than setting up all this and still having a single point of failure. That's the point, you know. But you can get creative and get smart about it and do cool things. All right, we got all three of these charging now with 3 turbines. 279 power split between 3. Each of these are charging for 92. Okay, that should be sufficient to keep up. But as you can see, this first one is barely keeping up as the main one. So this kind of does come into another problem, whereas this goes to 0 and can't quite hold up occasionally. These turrets are going to flicker, which is not the worst thing. They're only going to be off for a few seconds. But if someone is like really carefully watching your compound or base, they could use these little opportunities to sneak by your turrets. So there's little weaknesses that come with all this complication that people don't always think about. So I guess I just want to kind of throw that out there. I thought I was going to use the memory cell. I guess we don't need it here. Maybe we will. Let's think about this. Okay, so we want to kind of do the same thing with the third battery. Same setup. But we want to make sure that this blocks. And this third one should block from the first and the second. So that's what's sort of different here, is as you go further down the batteries, you got to block with all the previous ones. And I'm trying to think of the best way to do that. And I think it's just OR switches, basically. But that's going to start adding up in cost, but we're going to do it anyway. So let's go to this third one. Let's once again provide 70 power. 70 power was our magic number here. But now we can't just go to this OR, right? So there's a bit of a problem. We need to once again chain another OR. That this original one goes to. Right? And then this one also goes to. So this third one's only going to use 70, but now we got another OR in the mix. This one needs to go up a power to support that next OR, and so does this one. So we're getting incrementally more drain. But now we do have a nice chain where this OR is for the first 2, and this is the next one. As you can see, it's working. So we need to consider how to block this. And I think the best way to block it is with an OR and in this power out. And I believe we're going to need another branch here, because instead of going directly to the blocker, we're going to need to go to this, and we'll have it block here, and any extra power go to this OR that blocks the third one. And the second one is already ready. We'll just provide it to the OR. So if either of these are getting power, it will block the third one. So now the third one is properly blocked. I think that's all we got to do. So you need 2 more ORs, one up here to support the third one. Chain it in there. Or whatever you want to call it, I guess combine maybe. Link it. And you need to OR these first 2 to do that. So now this first battery is having trouble staying up. It's using 75 power. I guess, yeah. See, that's the thing with this. The first battery is now basically rendered useless, even with 3 turbines trying to just handle 6 turrets. And if you think about it, it's 3 turbines, it's 3 batteries. It should approximate to 1 turbine per battery charge-wise. So it should be able to hold up 6 turrets. But we're basically using the power of 7 turrets when we're including the power use on this electrical wall. But as you can see, we're doing some flickering things. It switches to the second battery. This one gets enough charge again, and then it works again. So not really ideal, really, in my opinion. I guess you need a 4th turbine. And that's it. We do have the 3 backup batteries working. So if someone, I don't know, just destroys this one entirely, it's going to default. It's going to switch over to the second one, still block the third. And perfect, it's still going. And then if they find the second one, boom, same thing. It's going to temporarily go off, then switch to the third, and still keep going. And also the charging gets better at this point too. But the reality here is, and what kind of gets me in these kind of systems and why I rarely actually do anything like this in a wipe, although it's very useful at times. At least to have like a second battery that holds a charge for a little bit of time. Because, you know, okay, let's think about this. Your second or your third battery is very rarely getting used. They should get to max charge. So you could have those as just like on a small charging station that switches in an emergency, and or you could use it as the battery you pick up to power turrets for raids and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. But yeah, pretty cool things. Let me know your comments and thoughts below, I suppose, and we'll keep talking about cool things. Get these hooked back up. Very easy to hook back up, just basically as they were. And this one will go to that second one. But I guess, you know, the backup ones are a good way to just have a charge going on. So I'm kind of thinking in this case, you know, we're using the splitter here, but if we wanted the first one to get the most charge, it might actually be best to do it this way and say, always give this one, I don't know, say 120 or something. That's just a kind of a guess number there. And that way it always gets a nice charge. And the second and third ones we can bump down a lot. I don't know. Maybe we'll say 60. And this last one, we'll just use the dynamic. Actually, we don't even need that if that's it. Just use the dynamic on the second one to charge the last one, which basically says whatever's left over, throw it into this last one. So there we got a nice charge coming in of 120. That's enough to keep this powered. We got this one charging for as much as it can. Only 46 in this case. I guess because we're only getting 168 right now, 167 based on the wind. So when wind picks up, this will charge up to 60 at a time. So it should get to full pretty quickly. And anything left over will go to this. So it actually, you know, now I'm thinking about it, you could just use the splitter for all the extra ones even. And say just split equally between all the backups. But that's up to you. That's just something to consider. And this way you at least don't have to program in hard numbers, and they just always take the extra beyond the first one. All right, pretty cool stuff though. Pretty cool. But you know, when in doubt, just remember, you don't need any of this. You can just keep it single battery, keep it single. Destroy that one. Like this in theory works just as well. But, you know, as you get more advanced, this might even be better in a lot of ways. Based on A, simplicity, and B, you're not using a bunch of power and a bunch of brain power on additional component stuff. This will keep it going indefinitely with only 6, no problem. Turbine's going to power 6, no problem. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you use these techniques or find them useful, at least to know about, even if you don't use them. But they are definitely useful in some cases. It just depends on what all you got going on and how much thought you want to put into your system. So I hope you found this useful. I'll see you guys in the next video. Matt out. Peace.